Well, hello there, the internet. My name is Wesley, and this is episode 3 of putting together a DIY synthesizer to donate to the Synth Library of Portland. I've got a lot of synth modules that are pretty nice, but they're not in my daily driver rack, and rather than collecting dust, I feel like someone ought to be using them. I figure every synthesizer needs filters, right? So I've got these two lovely little filters made by Music from Outer Space and assembled by me as a DIY kit. I haven't really been using them very much, so in the donation synth they go. These are 12 decibel multi-mode filters, so they have low, high, and bandpass modes. There's a little mixer on there with 3 inputs, 2 CV inputs, and another one that I've kludged into the back. And it also has a voltage controllable resonance amount, which is pretty interesting. So let's just give it a nice clean filter sweep and see how she sounds, eh? It's a pretty clean sweep, and you can see it almost like kills the sound completely when you get down pretty low. This is in the low pass mode, and with the resonance it doesn't kill the bass, and it doesn't get too insanely dirty. But it can get whistly if you crank it all the way up. But that's kind of to be expected. Okay, so the low pass filter is pretty tame, pretty manageable. It's a very polite, genteel little filter. But I think these types of filters really have their use, and they do sit well in a mix. Let's check out some of the other modes. So here's the bandpass mode. Cuts off the highs and lows, and you just hear what's in the middle. Alright, let's give the high pass filter a try, shall we? Just a quick note on the layout of these filters. This is input 1, and its input level is controlled by this knob. This knob controls the input of signal number 2, which goes in there, and then 3 corresponds to here. And then control voltage 1 and 2 don't have any like input attenuator on them, and the resonance control doesn't, and then these are all outputs. So the real benefit to having 2 filters side by side is that you can take the output of one and chain them together. So like, let's say I take the low pass output here, put it into the input of the next one, and then take the high pass output. Now we've got like kind of a band pass situation where both sides of it are controllable. It's kind of interesting, although I'm curious to see how it'll sound different if we go low pass into high pass, which we have right now, or high pass into low pass. So I don't know, let's give it a shot. This sounds pretty cool. Subjectively, I think I like it with the high pass going into the low pass, but there's all kinds of ways you can mess with it and do the band pass and all that kind of thing. Now let's take a look at that adjustable resonance control. Now I've just taken an LFO through a little attenuator, and I'm putting it into the resonance control of the low pass filter. this has me thinking, what if I put an oscillator that's at audio rate and put it in there? Alright, so this is a sine wave pulled from one of the oscillators that's also going into the audio input. It's got a little interesting texture to it. Anyway, I'm far from an expert on everything you can do with a filter, but I kind of just wanted to show off like what the different parts of these filters are and roughly what they sound like, so if anyone's checking this thing out at the Synth library, they'll have some idea of what they're looking at. Ooh, okay, a couple more things I'd like to mention before I go. Number one, having two of these means that you can pan them hard left and right and just do two completely separate signal paths and make a cool stereo patch. I'm going to include enough stuff in the donation synth to have two totally independent signal paths, so you can do that if you want. Like put them both in low pass mode and just go hard left and right, which can be pretty cool and sound really interesting. Technically it's binaural if you're fancy. The other thing is that the resonance control on these can go so high that they actually start to self-oscillate. Here, let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to turn down the audio going in, so there's nothing going into the filter now, and listen to this. I've got the resonance all the way up, and I can just kind of... So by tweaking that cutoff knob, I can just get a different note. And the thing is, if I take like a volt per octave signal, something that would normally drive an oscillator, and put it into the cutoff frequency control, you actually get that self-oscillating signal kind of can be played like a synth, and you can tell that it's like, it doesn't track super well, but as soon as you put a signal in, it starts tracking a lot better. So if I were to just, let's see, take this and then crank this a little. Well, let's see what sound we're getting. Dun, dun, okay. And now all of a sudden you've got these like organ tones. And as we crank up the audio of what's going in, it starts to track better and better. There, you can kind of hear it catching. So it's kind of dirty and gnarly and it doesn't track perfectly, but I think that's part of what makes it interesting, and by refining that patch you can do interesting things, add a little bit of texture by using the other control voltage input to, you know, modulate the resonance at audio frequency, or to just put an LFO on it or whatever, kind of like we did before, but with the resonance cranked all the way up and tracking the note. So there's a lot of interesting things you can do, and it doesn't just have to be these filters. Just about any filter that can kind of track volt per octave and has a self-oscillating resonance, you can do this technique, and it's very fun and interesting. Anyway, feel free to give this channel a sub if you're interested in seeing what happens as this project goes on. For the time being, I'm going to be figuring out printing off another one of these knobs and plopping this thing into the rack with the rest of the donation synth. Thanks, I've been Wesley. Have an awesome day.